In this lesson, you're going to improve your English reading skills. We're going to read a news article together. Welcome back to J4's English. Of course, I'm Jennifer. Now let's get started. First, I'll read the headline. U.S. election 2024, why the world is watching so closely. Let's take a look at this because you can say so closely, you could say so carefully, or you could say so attentively, which is a little more of a formal way of saying it. And people are watching so closely, carefully, attentively because it's a hot topic. A hot topic is simply a topic of great interest, relevance, or popularity, so a lot of people are talking about it. What about for you? For you, is the US election 2024 a hot topic? If it is, then put in the comments, hot topic. Put hot topic in the comments. And don't worry about taking all of these notes because I summarize everything in a free lesson PDF, so you can look in the description for the link. Let's continue. After recently spending a few weeks in Europe, the subject of America's presidential election was a constant topic of intense curiosity and concern among the people I spoke to. Now, all of this that I have highlighted could be summarized with hot topic, which we already discussed, was a hot topic among the people I spoke to. Now, I made a note here because sometimes I hear amongst, but if I hear that, I know the person isn't American because in North America, we don't use amongst. We only use among. But in British English, they use among and amongst. So if you want to sound more American, just use among. But of course, we know what it means. Concern among the people I spoke to. Now, just notice this preposition here. You couldn't get rid of it. You couldn't say among the people I spoke because you speak to someone. You talk to someone. So this to is required grammatically. This is a mistake I see a lot of students make, even advanced students. So don't forget that to. You speak to, you talk to someone. You listen to someone as well. Now, notice here, the author said a constant topic of intense, that means very strong, intense curiosity and concern. These two adjectives have different meanings. So curiosity is more of interest. So I summarized it with this emoji. But concern is more of a worry. So it's interesting that the author included these because if the author didn't, you wouldn't have this idea that there's also the worry. So that communicates a lot by including those two adjectives. So I summarized those three common verbs. You speak to, talk to, or listen to someone or something. But remember that not every verb follows that structure. For example, you watch someone. Oh, I'm watching my kids play at the park. You watch something. I'm watching the news on the 2024 presidential election. And no wonder. By saying, and no wonder, you're saying, I'm not surprised that it's a hot topic. I'm not surprised that it's a topic of intense curiosity and concern. I wrote that there for you. So for another example, she's concerned about, notice you're concerned about someone or something. She's concerned about her family in Gaza, and no wonder. I'm not surprised she's concerned about her family. It isn't surprising. This isn't surprising. So it's a great expression to have in your vocabulary if you want to sound very fluent, natural, and American. Are you enjoying this lesson? If you are, then I want to tell you about the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers from TV, the movies, YouTube, and the news so you can improve your listening skills of fast English, expand your vocabulary with natural expressions, and learn advanced grammar easily. Plus, you'll have me as your personal coach. You can look in the description for the link to learn more, or you can go to my website and click on Finally Fluent Academy. Now let's continue with our lesson. The US, don't forget this article because this is an exception. Countries don't have articles as a rule, except when there's an exception. The US, the UK, the US. The US is currently involved in 2 hot wars. Now you know how this adjective is being used. It's being used in the same way that hot topic, hot, is being used, and it represents a topic of great interest, relevance, or popularity. So instead of topic, it would be a war of great interest, relevance. Of course, popularity does not fit in this context, so just interest or relevance. 2 hot wars, Ukraine and Gaza. Meanwhile, US-China relations have deteriorated. So if something deteriorates, it gets worse. So the relationship between the US and China has gotten worse or is getting worse. Has gotten worse in the present perfect sounds like it's a completed action, but there's a result in the present. Now our relationship isn't good. If you say is getting worse, it's in progress right now. But notice they use have deteriorated, which means the action has happened in the past, and now there's a result in the present. Well, what's the result? If they don't have a good relationship, then maybe they're not trading as frequently, they're not helping each other as frequently, or many other results as well. I wrote those notes for you. So the relations have deteriorated, and tensions in the Asia-Pacific region have risen. So same thing, present perfect, because it's a completed past action with a result in the present. So the tensions have already risen, increased. There is more tension. Tension is when 2 people, they're just tense, right? So when you're communicating with your boss, your spouse, your friend, and you're tense, obviously you're not going to communicate in a very friendly way. So if tensions have risen, completed past action, the result in the present is, well, and now they're not working together very well. And now they're not sharing information. And now they're not helping each other. Those are just examples. I don't know if that is actually the case. Let's continue. Closer to home. So in this case, home being the United States, because China geographically is quite far from the United States. But then let's look here closer to home. Well, Central America is closer to the United States. So that's what the closer to home reference means. Closer to home, Central American nations are under the spotlight. So if someone or something is under the spotlight, it means they're being watched carefully. But remember, we learned those 3 different adjectives, being watched carefully, closely, or attentively. As a growing number of migrants are trying to get to the US through a border which seems more porous by the day. Porous describes something with small holes so small you might not even see them. And generally it's so liquid or air can get through. You might describe soil as porous, or ground in general as porous. And pores are all over our face, and liquid in terms of sweat gets through our pores. So the noun is pore, and then the adjective is porous. Now in this case, of course, they're not talking about liquid or air, they're talking about people. So you can imagine there's this border, and then if there's holes in the border, people can just go through those holes. So that is the image that they want you to have by using this more porous by the day. There is almost no area of the world where American leadership doesn't matter, which is why, again, at the top, we can describe it as a hot topic. From Beijing to Buenos Aires, people follow the fortunes of the US election candidates and tune in for the results. When you tune in to something, or in this case, for something for the results. For is in order to receive. You would tune into a TV show. It simply means you watch that TV show, but it's for any media. So it could be to listen to a podcast or listen to the radio. Tune in tomorrow, listen to our show tomorrow, watch our show tomorrow, tune in. So a great phrasal verb that you can use for media. Now, there is a great expression that I thought of when I saw tune in, which is stay tuned. Stay tuned. Have you heard that? Stay tuned. So I could say, I'll post another lesson soon, so stay tuned. That means keep watching, keep listening, because when you tune in, you start watching, you start listening. So I want you to remain, stay tuned, keep watching, keep listening. So will you stay tuned to my YouTube channel? If you will, then put I'll stay tuned in the future simple, because you're promising, you're making a commitment. I'll stay tuned, Jennifer, please do. So put that in the comments. Okay, and tune in for the results. So watch the results. Turn on the TV, go to the specific channel and watch the results. Tune in. It has a global audience like no other election, because America still matters like no other country. But this, my sixth presidential election, so the author of this article must be a reporter or a journalist who covers presidential elections. And this is his sixth presidential election. But this, my sixth presidential election, seems to have an international focus that is more intense than ever. Partly because the US is so involved in so many areas of the world, but also because of what happened after the last one. The last one being the last presidential election. The events of January 6, 2021 revealed the precariousness of America's democracy. So this symbol, this keyboard symbol, is called an asterisk, and it's used to represent a footnote. So a footnote is when you want to give more information about a specific point. It might be a clarifying point. It might be just more information, a statistic, who the author is, where this information comes from. Any of that. And generally footnotes are at the bottom of the page, but for reading this, I put the footnote right here just so you can get the information right now. So I'll read the footnote for you. The White House was attacked by a mob of supporters of then U.S. President Donald Trump. By saying then U.S. President, it means at this time, because he's not the president right now. So then U.S. President at this specific time. U.S. President Donald Trump, 2 months after his defeat, so one's defeat is if they lose, after his defeat in the 2020 presidential election. So this information isn't relevant to the article, it's only relevant to this specific information, the events of January 6, 2021, just so you're not wondering. You might stop reading the article because you're like, well, what events? I don't know what these events are. So the footnote just shares that information with you, but it's considered separate from the actual topic of the article. So the events of January 6, 2021, which now you know what those events are, revealed the precariousness of America's democracy. Let's talk about this. Precariousness, this is when something is in a dangerous state because safety or security is not guaranteed. Now, revealed, because the events revealed means made this information known, made it publicly available. So these events, the fact that the White House was attacked, that made known, revealed the precariousness of America's democracy. The fact that democracy, even in the US, isn't 100% guaranteed. something like this happened. Now the world wants to know how well the country will fare in its next big democratic test, which is the 2024 election, as well as the host of crises that America already is confronting. So let's just pause and review this one. The crises. Crises is the plural form of crisis. So it's an irregular plural. And notice the pronunciation, because we have crisis, crises, e. So you have that long e on the plural. Crisis, crises. As well as the host of crises that America already is confronting, the next president will also have to deal with the unexpected. 2023 was the hottest year on record. 2022 brought war in Europe. 2020 brought a global pandemic no one saw coming. So all of these are examples of the unexpected, which is a very useful thing to do when you're communicating an idea, is to share examples of what you mean by unexpected. So this is a very powerful way to reinforce your ideas, to communicate. Now, I like this expression. No one saw it coming. I didn't see that coming. I didn't see the pandemic coming. I don't know about you, but I certainly did not see the pandemic coming. I didn't see the first lockdown coming. I didn't see the second lockdown coming. I didn't see running out of toilet paper coming. I didn't see any of that coming, which means I didn't anticipate it. I didn't predict it. So the expression is to see something coming, and that's when you anticipate or predict something before it happens. So here's an example. Jane was fired, which means her boss said, "You no longer work here." Jane was fired. And then you can say, saw that coming. I saw that coming. How did you predict this or anticipate this? Probably because Jane was a terrible employee. She did a really bad job. She always came in late. She was rude. I saw that coming. Or maybe Jane was the best employee ever. Then you can use this negatively and say, I didn't see that coming. I didn't see that coming. So you could also say that. So that's a great expression to add to your speech. You will again sound very American. The US can't tackle any of those things without strong global alliances, which is why the world's reaction to this election doesn't just matter to the rest of the world, it matters to America too. All right, let's look at, here it is, tackle. I like this verb. When you tackle something, it means you try to deal with something negative. So this is only used with problems, something negative. And to deal with is the phrasal verb form of saying resolve. So when you try to resolve something negative, it's important to note that it's when you try to. It doesn't mean that you've successfully done it. You're just trying to. So you might say, I need to tackle my finances. If you say this, you're saying that your finances, your financial situation is in a negative state. Maybe it's very disorganized. You don't have a budget. You don't know when your bills are coming in or going out. So it's a negative situation. So you want to try to improve, try to resolve, try to deal with that. You need to tackle it. And that's exactly what you're doing with improving your English. You're tackling your fluency. And I'm so happy to help you. And that's the end of our article. So what I'll do now is I'll read the article from start to finish, and this time you can just focus on my pronunciation. So let's do that now. US election 2024. Why the world is watching so closely. After recently spending a few weeks in Europe, the subject of America's presidential election was a constant topic of intense curiosity and concern among the people I spoke to. And no wonder. The US is currently involved in two hot wars, Ukraine and Gaza. Meanwhile, US-China relations have deteriorated, and tensions in the Asia-Pacific region have risen. Closer to home, Central American nations are under the spotlight as a growing number of migrants are trying to get to the U.S. through a border which seems more porous by the day. There is almost no area of the world where American leadership doesn't matter. From Beijing to Buenos Aires, people follow the fortunes of the U.S. election candidates and tune in for the results. It has a global audience like no other election, because America still matters like no other country. But this, my sixth presidential election, seems to have an international focus that is more intense than ever. Partly because the US is so involved in so many areas of the world, but also because of what happened after the last one. The events of January 6, 2021 revealed the precariousness of America's democracy. The White House was attacked by a mob of supporters of then US President Donald Trump 2 months after his defeat in the 2020 presidential election. Now the world wants to know how well the country will fare in its next big democratic test, as well as the host of crises that America already is confronting. The next president will also have to deal with the unexpected. 2023 was the hottest year on record. 2022 brought war in Europe. 2020 brought a global pandemic no one saw coming. The US can't tackle any of those things without strong global alliances, which is why the world's reaction to this election doesn't just matter to the rest of the world, it matters to America too.
So did you like this lesson? Do you want me to make more lessons where we review news about the American presidential election? If you do, then put Election 2024, Election 2024, put it in the comments and I'll keep making these lessons for you. And of course, make sure you like this lesson, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you're notified every time I post a new lesson. And you can get this free speaking guide where I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. You can click here to download it or look for the link in the description. And you can keep improving your English reading with this lesson right now.